Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. It's Ken Calvert along with Father Joe Grimaldi for Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, the home of the Star Treatment. Stop by 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield. Have a cup of coffee with one of their seasoned, certified sales specialists. They're happy to show you the impressive new lineup of stunning Lincoln vehicles, including the all-new must-have 2020 Lincoln Aviator. Can't stop in? You can shop online, starlincoln.com. Great way of doing it, by the way. Get a cup of coffee, sit down in front of the computer, go through all the models, all the styles, all the looks, the interiors, the packages. Everything you could want in a vehicle is available for you online. You can sit right there and get it all done at home. As you know, I'm driving and loving the Lincoln MKC. You got to check that out. The all-new Nautilus is absolutely off the charts. And Star would like to thank all of you for one of their best months ever. Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, home of not just the Star Treatment, but the Father Joe Star Treatment. Oh, yeah. Today, I'm going to get to ask all of the questions. You have not seen the questions, and we will hear the answers. But it has to do with your vocation, actually vocations.
Great.
Right? Both being a brother, an Irish Christian brother, and a Catholic priest. So here is question number one, Father Joe Grimaldi. Why did you become a priest?
Can I say why did I become a brother first?
Yes, I wish you would.
I went to one of the brothers' schools, All Hallows, which is located in New York City. In any case, I observed what the brothers would do on a daily basis in their teaching, actually even playing sports with them and things of that sort. So eventually I said, I think I would like doing that. I brought the whole situation home because I was still in high school. So I was a junior at the time, and I still had another year to go at All Hallows. But I mentioned it to my family. They were not exactly thrilled about it. Now, mind you, they're from the old country, and they said, well, why bother becoming a brother if you want to do that kind of stuff, become a priest? Well, not realizing that they are two separate vocations. The vocation to the brotherhood involves really immersing yourself in teaching, whether it be high school, elementary school, or college, whatever the case might be, or working in hospitals and things of that sort. Whereas being a priest, you're working your ministry in a parish setting. In any case, I did say to my family, I really do like the idea of becoming a brother, which is different than the priest. What makes it different? Well, the brothers live in community life. Community life is supposed to show to the public that people of different ethnic groups and colors and so on and so forth can live together in harmony, and supposed to, in itself, teach or give a lesson to how to live together in harmony to the general public that surrounds them. Whether it does or not remains to be seen. But the idea that this group of men living in community, dedicating themselves to teaching, I found that impressive. In any case, I did my studies, and my first assignment was Brother Rice High School. That was back in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
And
my Brother Rice?
Yes.
Okay.
And what was funny, my parents or my mother said, wow, you're going all the way out west. You're going to need long johns. I said, Ma, that's still part of the Eastern Zone,
But she was right about the long johns. Come on.
Well, New York is not so warm either.
I know.
Anyway,
yeah.
But I got a big kick out of that, having to wear long johns. In any case, I arrived here full of enthusiasm and a sense of dedication. And the school was just opening. They had just finished first and second year students. We were beginning junior year when I came. And so 1962 was filled with new hope because everything was brand new at the school. Even the desks, for example, moving desks from one place to another so the rooms would be equipped so when the new class came in, they would find it easy to move around. To make a long story short, I became a brother, and I was happy in doing that. And I was a brother for many years, 31 years.
Right.
And, decisions don't happen automatically. They evolve, basically. But in 1970, let's say 1971 or 2, I started thinking, I was at that time still at Brother Rice, and I was thinking maybe I should be a priest. My intention now was to go work and live in Hawaii. That's what they told me. Mm-hmm. So I got to Hawaii in 1974. In 1974, I started looking around to see what priests were doing at the time. And, I think I could do that. I kept thinking, I really want to do that. I think so. And besides, dealing with teenagers, and I don't regret any of it, dealing with teenagers for 31 years is limiting, if you want. Mm-hmm. And now moving on to a different ministry where you deal from birth until death.
Yeah.
So you have the whole span of life that you're dealing with. That intrigued me. I mean, it made my mind wander about, how do I do this? Where do I go? And so on. Well, I went through the usual procedures. I spoke to the Bishop of Honolulu because that's where I was at the time. And he said, well, let's be patient about this. Let's be patient. Then I had to speak to my provincial, my boss.
Yes.
And he said to me, we have to pray over this. We really do have to pray over this. Yeah. I said, okay, we'll pray over it. Yeah. But meanwhile, time went on. I finished my term in Honolulu, and I figured that would be a time to do. Mm-hmm. And so I spoke to my provincial. This was a good time for me to move on. Well, they need you back at Brother Rice in Michigan. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I was there for 11 years already, and so don't worry. You'll be the principal there. Uh-huh. It's a new ministry in a different way, so you can go with enthusiasm and do what you can. They do want you back, though. I said, okay. All right, so I did come back to Brother Rice, and I said, but, to the provincial, I said, there has to be a limit, though, because I can't be waiting too long. It's like I'm going to need a walker to get around by the time I'm ordained. It's not, you're not dealing with a little kid here. So finally, he eventually said, well, let's finish the term at Brother Rice. The term meaning going from 80 to 86. So in 1986, I went off to study at Catholic University. And interestingly, after the third year, my bishop said to me, would you mind going to Rome to finish off your first degree? And I said, I'd go in a heartbeat. So sure enough, I did my fourth year of theology at the Gregorian in Rome. Came back.
Can't beat that.
And was ordained in 1990. I was in a parish for only 5 years, and I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed being in a parish.
I remember that because we did talk about that.
And sure enough, back to Rome to study canon law. So the vocations of the priesthood, to answer your question quickly, I think I did answer it in many ways. I don't think there's ever any one motive. I think there's a combination of things. I was happy with being a brother. I was not unhappy. Mm-hmm. I was happy about it. But by the same token, I was yearning for a change. And I thought that the priesthood is what I wanted because it took care of the whole span of life from birth to death. So anyway, I ended up very happily as a priest. To this day, after 28 years, I don't regret my decision about being a priest. I purposely have left out the spiritual aspect of both. Okay. Obviously, there's a prayer life attached to both the brothers. Brothers more in community, praying in community. Priests have to learn to pray by themselves, but praying for the whole church. So you don't pray just for yourself. You pray for the whole church.
For guys like me.
Well, for everybody.
I know, well, but I'm included in that.
Yeah,
obviously.
of course you are, and so am I. But I don't know. I'm just thinking there are two prayers that are considered public prayers in the church. One of them is the Mass. Mm-hmm. The other is the office. The priest has to do both as often as possible.
I remember that.
And so the public prayer, even though you're saying it privately, is still a public prayer. The Mass is no longer, how should I put it, in the old days, if you were at home and you could do it by yourself on the kitchen counter. So Vatican II came across as no more kitchen counter. You have to at least have one or two other people with you when you say the Mass.
Now, real quickly, do you know any other brothers that have become priests as well, like you?
I do.
Oh.
I do, yeah.
So you're not that unique.
No. It's not a lot,
yeah.
But there were a certain number of them. There was a fellow that I still remember was kind of interesting because we lived in different parts of the country. I found out later we went through similar stages, even with the health issues. Having his first heart attack when I had my first, his second when I had my second.
Let's stay away from the third, okay?
But anyway, he didn't.
Yeah.
And so the poor guy, well, he's gone to heaven, I'm sure. John O'Brien is gone. But he's been gone for a while now. It's not just recent. But in any case, yes, he's at least one. And I've heard of a few others.
All right. Because those ranks are thinning a little bit, and we can talk about that at another time. I have never asked you this before. Are you in an order that, I know that there are the Jesuits, for example.
Franciscans.
And the Franciscans. What is your order?
I don't belong to an order. As a brother, I did.
You were the Irish Christian brother.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the designation. They're now called the Christian Brothers. The funny part about that is to be FSCH with the initials, food, shelter, clothing, and heaven, too. That's what we used to joke about. Yeah, the initials were Fratres Christianarum Scholarum Hiberniae, which was the Brothers of the Christian Schools of Ireland. Then, around Vatican II in the 60s, they got rid of the Irish Christian Brothers, so it became CFC, the Congregation of Christian Brothers, Congregatio Fratres Christianarum. So, in any case, every priest has to belong to something. And I use that word purposely because the church word, the ecclesiastical word, would be incardinated. Incardination. Every priest has to be incardinated, either into a religious order or a diocese, which means then the order or the diocese has to take care of you for life.
Oh.
So I belong to the Diocese of Honolulu.
Oh, it's interesting. It sounds easier to explain than it is, but that's so.
Well, you just belong to that diocese. That means when I entered through that diocese, and
Right.
once you enter, that's it. It's like your family.
Sure. What do you like about this lifestyle?
It's hard for me to compare it to others, but every morning you wake up, there's a new event. You meet new people. You meet new and interesting situations. It's never the same. It doesn't get boring, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
It never gets boring. I like the variety of things that we're involved in, whether it be baptism, funerals, weddings, the regular masses, the Sunday masses, and so on. So there's a variety of the things that we do. Then we get involved in other things as well, whether it be education, whether it be social work. So there's different aspects of our lives depending on your interest and talents.
Not to mention the business side of it.
You bring up a very good point today. Pastors in particular, once they're appointed pastors, very often, not always, but very often, lack not only experience, but education in the area of finances. And so here they're asked to run this multi-million-dollar parish.
Yeah.
And you run it basically, the church has got the spiritual side, but it also has its physical side. When you're asked to run the physical side of the church, you have to have some ability. So a wise pastor would make sure to surround himself with experts in the field. and also to cover himself with good lawyers so that he has all of this experience around him. So when making a decision, he gets the input of all of these people to do the right thing. And so far, it's been working out. Obviously, for somebody that has a better knowledge and experience in finances, it's easier. But by the same token, it even works out for the person that hasn't done all of those studies.
So you're telling me then that it doesn't just happen miraculously, that the church lights go on, the heat goes on, desks appear in the grade school and high school?
I always said, when you are the principal of the high school, your best friend has to be the maintenance man.
I remember that as well.
You don't get around without that maintenance man. But anyway, we have to know what we're doing because of the physical aspect of the church, which brings me to just a little side thing here. Who is the church? The people are the church. You can have your most beautiful building, magnificent building, architecturally, everything else. Well, it's nothing unless the people are in there. They're the ones that make the church. So there is a spiritual side, but there's also the physical side of a church.
So many churches, unfortunately, have closed. And when you read about the mass mobs going back to these churches now, they're going because of the fact that within months, maybe just a year or so, they will be shuttered, they will close, because of the lack of parishioners and because of that, the physical plant, the costs just to keep it up.
I know, for example, I do a couple of weddings in the Sweetest Heart of Mary, which is a beautiful church in Detroit. It's architecturally, it's a real accomplishment. And so many of the young couples choose what we call destination weddings, and they get married in this particular church, even though the church itself is surrounded with almost nothing, torn down buildings and so on. Well, things are getting a lot better, but by the same token, the church can't support itself with just a couple of weddings. So they do have a couple of masses on the weekends, but not too many. Mob masses, people do try to go to these things because they have sentimental value to the people.
Next question for you, sir. Today we are talking about the various questions that I have written down to ask Father Joe Grimaldi on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. Let me ask you another quick question. What role do you play in the community?
I try to be a leader. I try to give good example. I certainly am a human being, and I may fail at times. I may get angry at times when I shouldn't if you're going to give that kind of an example. Road rage is a good example.
We've talked about your road rage, boy.
I am.
We're working on it together, folks. You should be advised that I'm being the counselor on this one.
But there are so many different things that is expected of the priest. One of the things I mentioned before, and I still believe it, very often the people hold the priest on a pedestal, and they forget that the priest is human. And so there's a lot expected of that priest. And they don't realize that he's a human being just like anybody else. Matter of fact, what's interesting in my mind is even the Protestant minister is not held to that same degree for some reason. If it's a priest, wow. And so, God forbid he should fall from that pedestal, he falls hard.
Do you ever get lonely?
Of course.
Okay. Do you ever wish you could be married?
Yes or no.
Well,
when you think about the responsibility of raising a family and then the reality, I don't know if the Catholic Church is ready to bring in a whole bunch of married priests. Financially, I don't think they could support that. It's difficult enough supporting a single priest. And the other thing, too, if you're going to be a priest, you really have dedicated yourself to following in the path of Jesus Christ. But the congregation comes first. If you are a married man, your first obligation is to your family, your wife and your family. Then the church, if you want. So it's very difficult to compromise that when you're dealing with a pastor, let's say, of a church. Can he really compromise keeping a family in there and and also being called in the middle of the night to anoint somebody. Now, that's probably the most exaggerated part. But there are other things.
There are people out there right now that think that the population of the church would grow if there was married priests.
Yeah, and you're speaking to someone who says we should have married priests.
And you've said before that you think it will happen, but not in your lifetime.
No, not in my life. But right now, I'm just so thrilled to see that the Holy Father is open to a lot of things that nobody ever thought would be. At least he's open for discussion.
What is your favorite Italian dish?
I have to admit that, there are very few things I don't like about Italian cooking. And I could easily become a vegetarian with Italian food. Pasta is not always the main ingredient.
Yeah. Was your mom a good cook?
Excellent.
No kidding.
Excellent cook.
And how do you consider yourself when it comes to finding your way around the kitchen, sir?
I'm not going to starve.
Have you ever offended somebody over their Italian cooking? Have you ever said, could I used a little more basil?
That's not the thing to do.
I want to end by telling everyone, if they didn't know, that Father Joe Grimaldi and I do go back to the 60s. As a matter of fact, I attended Brother Rice, and I graduated in the year 1969. I believe I had you for one or two classes. I really don't remember, and I certainly don't expect you to remember. I know you taught Latin and I believe French. You were everybody's favorite, and you remain that way today. So that's our connection. That's how I got to know Father Joe Grimaldi. We've run into each other over the years, many, many years. We've stayed close, and so therefore there is that connection. If you've ever wondered, why is this guy Ken Calvert associating himself with Father Joe Grimaldi, and as we put it out there in black and white, a rock and roller and a holy roller, what can come out of that? Well, something pretty darn good called the Father Joe Podcast.
What's coming out of it is the deep sense of religion that Ken Calvert has that doesn't always show itself, but once you get to know him, it's there.
Well, it was, hey, listen, I was interviewing you, and we're not going the other way. As a wise person once said, and it was somebody that taught me at Brother Rice, I said something once about being bored, and that person looked at me and said, you know something, Ken? Only boring people get bored.
Aha.
My words of wisdom for the day. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think it was a great interchange.
All right. Now, listen, we're going to do this again. It's the Father Joe Podcast, and I want to thank you all for joining us. I'm Ken Calvert, Father Joe Grimaldi. I'll see you down the road.
I look forward to seeing you as well. Take care. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.